Today on Ag Etc. I visit with County Executive Director of Harvey and Sedgwick County FSA, Sean Rafferty, for an update on CFAP and acreage reporting. Then the Kansas Water Office brings you videos highlighting water technology farm producers. This week's featured producer is Matt Long. Next, I bring you this week's Young Leader in Ag, Natalie Harris. Learn about Natalie's ag background along with her internship opportunities with Kansas Soybean and JBS. Finally, stick around to learn the do's and don'ts when it comes to grilling meat with K-State Food Safety Science Specialist, Karen Blakeslee. It's all coming up on Ag Etc. Stay tuned.
At Farm Credit, we partner with America's farmers who work hard each and every day to grow the food that we all enjoy. It's not an easy task, but it's an important one. Farm Credit is proud to work with farmers and ranchers, lending support in rural America.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker, and for an FSA update, I have with me now County Executive Director of Harvey and Sedgwick County FSA, Sean Rafferty. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for bringing me back.
Anytime. Now, there are quite a few changes with CFAP. What should producers know along with that?
Well, there have been two significant changes with CFAP. There was this thing called a NOFA, where producers were allowed to call in and make suggestions on what they would like to see change with the program. And two main areas were, number one, you will see an announcement coming out this Friday, which will list a bunch of specialty crops that will now be included with their application. Now, what crops will they be? We're not certain, but the good news is the information is supposed to be out Friday. The other new piece of information is we've received clarification that corn that was swathed and baled is now eligible. Prior to that, we didn't know, but now we have confirmation that that swathed corn can count as well.
And Sean, once again, what is the deadline for CFAP?
Very good question. The deadline so far is still set on August 28th.
All right. So, Sean, acreage reporting has drastically changed due to COVID as well. Explain how so.
Yes, so acreage reporting is not only a struggle for our producers, but also the FSA offices. Our offices, we are working by phone, telephone appointment only. And once the producer gives us a contact, we will try and work with them to see what works best on how we can get their maps. One tip that I can offer is if your reporting is already done with your insurance person, let me tell you, that is a huge help if you can provide those maps that you got from those great insurance folks to the FSA office. That gives us a leg up on what it is that you're going to report. So aside from calling the office to see how we can get your maps, if you have those maps handy, send them to us. We can take them by fax, mail. Well, there's also, we can get them at that front door.
Sean, there is also an upcoming county office committee election. Go into that a bit.
Well, just briefly, every year, well, as most farmers probably know, every FSA office has a board, and they're referred to as the County Office Committee. They are elected officials that represent the farmers in their county, and every year, one portion of that county is eligible for an election. So the key is whether or not your part of the county is up for election, and if so, we are accepting nominees at this time, and we will continue to accept nominees all the way through August the 1st. Contact FSA for a form, and we'll be happy to sign you up.
And once again, is there anything producers can do? I know you mentioned insurance, getting a leg up on that. Anything producers can do to make this new process of servicing customers go more smoothly?
Well, one great thing about farmers is they're a friendly bunch, and they're always very patient. One thing that we would like for them to try to do is be willing to try and do something different. That's what we're doing, and unfortunately, we're doing as much as we can through the electronic process, and yes, that means email. But I know they got those phones because they check that market right around noon. Mm-hmm. So anyway, try to be a little more tech savvy, but of course, we're doing the best we can, and I know that our farmers understand.
Yep, and you're always open for just a phone call.
Oh yes, just like this one we're having today.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for once again coming on the program.
You bet. Thank you.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
No one plans to get sick or injured, but when life happens, it's important you and your family are protected. Kansas Farm Bureau health plans are there to provide continued health care coverage to meet your needs. Choose from a broad range of individual and family plans. And if you're over 65, we have options for you too. Learn more at kfbhealthplans.com or contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Welcome back to Ag Etc. Next, the Kansas Water Office brings you videos highlighting water technology farms, this week being Matt Long.
My name is Matt Long. This is the Long Farm Water Technology Farm, and it's located north of Marienthal, Kansas. Our office is in Leota. This is the only pivot we have on our farm, and it is part of that. We agreed to take a 29% reduction in our historical use for the first 7 years, and so far it's been a pretty simple cut to take because we've been blessed with pretty good rainfall the last few years. So 29% cut's a pretty large cut in water use by most people's terms, but so far we've been yielding at or above our APH and actually using about 40% less water than our historical. So that's why I was saying it's been a pretty easy cut to take, and then the flexibility that we gained by joining the WCA, we can save any of the water that we don't use from 1 year and carry it forward into future years. So, if we get 4 or 5 years in and we have, say, 100 acre feet that we've been allocated but haven't used, and we have a drought, then we can utilize some of that extra reserve that we've banked up. Part of the reason water conservation is important to me is because of the community I live in. It's really tied to the water. Part of it is down to the business that I'm in. I sell a lot of corn seed to farmers who use irrigation to grow that corn, and so it's important that that resource is still there for me to sell them that seed in the future. And then, part of it is just that aspect of, this is the community that I grew up in. It's where I wanted to raise my kids and my own family, and I just don't think that opportunity would necessarily be here for my kids if that's what they decided they wanted to do, 20 years from now when they're graduating college. And so if without the water, that opportunity is not going to be here. So why don't we, make a little bit of a change now to at least have that opportunity there for them if they decide that it's what they want.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we'll be glad to answer it and work with you.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an Ihop. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
This segment brought to you by Farm Credit Associations of Kansas, lending support to rural America, and by American Ag Service, your DuPont Pioneer dealer.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker. We're returning with our Young Leaders in Ag segment, and this week's Young Leader in Ag is Natalie Harris. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Natalie, go into a bit of your ag background.
So I grew up on a farm south of Abilene, Kansas, where we raised sheep as well as crops. So we were diversified. We grew wheat, sorghum, and soybeans. That's where my love for ag, I would guess say, that's where it started at. And then I was involved heavily with 4-H and FFA growing up, and which led me into K-State. I always had a passion for purple. I grew up going to K-State football games, and so I got to see that family environment that I'd always heard about. So K-State was for sure my dream school, and that's where it all started.
Yeah, so during your time at K-State, what did you major in?
I am majoring in agribusiness, and then I have a secondary major in global food systems leadership.
And you actually interned with Kansas Soybean and with JBS. Go into a bit of those experiences.
Yeah, so this past summer I interned with Kansas Soybean Association, and that was really cool for me because I got to see the other side of production agriculture after having grown up around crops and even raising soybeans. But yeah, I was involved in a lot of different activities. That internship was pretty cool and unique because I got to do a lot of different things. It wasn't just one particular project that I worked on. I worked on a bit of everything, which was really cool for me, and it really exposed me to that side of the industry. And then this summer I'm interning with JBS as a sales and marketing intern, and so that's really cool because I'm on the fed beef sales team, and so I also get to work with the animal side of things. So I'm really appreciative for the internships that I've had so far. I love that I've had it very diversified, and it allows me to see more of the ag industry as a whole.
Now, as a young person watching this, what are some valuable things that come out of internships?
I would say one of the most valuable things that I always tell prospective students when I sit in with them for visits for College of Ag Ambassadors is that it certainly is always helpful to have an internship, whether that leads you down the path of, yes, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life, or maybe you get into an internship and you're in it for 3 months, you're like, I don't ever want to do this again. So I really appreciate it because it's a great experience, great exposure to the ag industry, and it really gives you a feel for potential career opportunities later on.
Yeah, and really gets your foot in the door with certain people in the industry.
Yes, for sure.
So, Natalie, last question and probably loaded question, but where do you see yourself going in the agricultural industry in the future?
I would say kind of a timeline. I always want to be involved in the agriculture industry in any way that I can. I've always kind of had my foot in the door in that aspect, coming from my background and then what I pursued in college. So yeah, being involved, hopefully, ideally, I'd like to be in marketing. So anyway, any kind of thing that entails. But yeah, just always supporting and advocating for the agriculture industry is where I hope to be at.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Natalie, so much for being on the program.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
At Farm Credit, we partner with America's farmers who work hard each and every day to grow the food that we all enjoy. It's not an easy task, but it's an important one. Farm Credit is proud to work with farmers and ranchers, lending support in rural America.
Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to western Kansas.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
This segment brought to you by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker. As we are in full swing of summer, most of us have our grills out in full force. As we're grilling this summer, most people go strictly off the color of meat they're grilling to indicate if the food is ready to be consumed. But color is not always the right indicator of meat doneness. With me now is food safety specialist Karen Blakeslee. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why isn't the color always a good indicator of food doneness?
Well, when we think of grilling meat, the color does change when you cook it, but it can be a little deceiving, especially when you're cooking ground meat like hamburgers. The color on the inside might look brown, which some people determine, oh, that looks done. Well, actually, the actual temperature of that hamburger may not be high enough to kill any potential bacteria that might be in there. On the flip side, it could still show that it's pink, but actually the temperature is up to the appropriate temperature that it needs to be. So that's why we don't recommend, especially for ground meat, to judge the doneness by using color. Now, if you're cooking something like a steak or something like that, the inside of that meat has never been touched by anything else. So that's why you can still have that range of temperature when you're cooking like a steak or something like that. The temperature for doneness can actually be a little bit lower. But for ground meat, since it's gone through that mechanical action of breaking up that meat muscle, there's a lot more exposure to the meat surface, and there's always that little chance that bacteria could have gotten on that little piece of meat. And so that's why, especially for ground meats, we really need to use a thermometer to check for doneness, and for other things, but especially for ground meat.
So what is the correct way to use a food thermometer?
Well, it depends on the type of thermometer that you have. So one of the standards, and I'll kind of hold up my thermometer here. This is a dial gauge thermometer. And this one is probably one of the least expensive thermometers that you can find. It's got a dial face on it, looks like that. And what you usually see on these is a little dimple right here on the stem. And so when you insert this into any kind of food, you want to make sure the stem gets completely covered, at least up to where that dimple is, or even higher. So this one's a little trickier because the temperature sensor is farther up in the stem of the thermometer. Now, if you have a digital thermometer, which might look like something like this, turn it on so that you can see the numbers on there. These are a little more temperature sensitive. The temperature sensitive point is actually in the tip. So how you use your thermometer, again, depends on which type that you have. So again, for the dial face, you have to insert it at least up until where that dimple is. So if you're checking a hamburger, you'll want to insert it onto the side like this, not from the top. But if you have a digital thermometer, you can insert it from the top and get an accurate reading. It's a little easier to handle, especially when you're cooking hamburgers or something like that. Those thinner cuts, this is probably a little better way to go. There's lots of different kinds of thermometers out there. There's some that are electronic, have bells and whistles. They can connect to your smartphones. So you just need to shop for what works best for you and for your budget.
But regardless, especially with those ground meats, they're worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They are your best defense for food safety. And again, we don't want you to judge the meat doneness, especially on ground meats, by color. As I mentioned earlier, steaks could be, a little pink in the middle. Some people like rare steaks, or even well-done steaks. So you can use a little varying temperature on those. So, but yeah, this is your best friend when it comes to food safety, is your thermometer.
When we come back, we'll have more with Karen here on Ag Etc.
I'm Bob Swartz, and I've devoted the last 43 years to helping Kansans reach their retirement goals and to protect the family farm. At Bob Swartz Financial, we believe everyone should be able to live the retirement they've always dreamed of. Our team of professionals can help you create an efficient strategy using a variety of investment vehicles to help you address your financial needs and your concerns. Bob Swartz Financial values commitment and transparency.
Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to western Kansas.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Let us help feed your family.
Welcome back to Ag Etc. We're continuing with grilling tips with Karen Blakeslee.
So there are 3 most common types of grilled meats. Would you go into that and the correct temperatures?
Sure. So there's 3 temperatures to remember. It's really pretty simple. The first temperature is 145 degrees. That's the minimum cooking temperature for whole muscle meats like steaks and chops, roasts, things like that. 145 is what you're looking for, degrees Fahrenheit. For ground meat like ground beef, ground pork, ground lamb, those are your red meats. The internal temperature you're looking for is 160. And then for all poultry products, whether they're chicken breasts or chicken thighs or a whole chicken, whatever it is, 165 is what you're looking for poultry, any kind of poultry.
Now, Karen, to wrap up, do you have any more food safety tips for grilling outdoors?
Absolutely. Well, the main thing is, if you're taking meat out to the grill, you got it on a plate, raw meat. Don't reuse that plate for the finished meat. Either get a different plate or wash it before you use it for your finished foods. So keep your plates and utensils separate to prevent cross-contamination. Always wash your hands. That's just a given for anything, especially these days. If we all don't know how to wash our hands by now, I'm not sure what else we can say, but it is so important for overall health. Other things, keep your hot foods hot. When you're ready to eat them, try to keep them above 140 degrees. If you're eating outside, if you're out for more than an hour, you want to get those foods in a cold container, either an ice chest or a refrigerator, within 1 hour with these hot temperatures that we're having these days. So keep your hot foods hot. Same thing with cold foods. Keep them below 40. Keep your cold foods cold. And again, don't leave them out for more than an hour in these hot temperatures outside. Be mindful of where you're grilling at. You don't want to catch anything on fire. If you can set your grill up away from your house so that it doesn't, flames don't touch your house or anything like that. You don't want to get your house on fire. So, be mindful of that. Kids and pets outside, be out there with the grill so that the kids and pets don't run into it and knock it over and things like that. So, but most importantly, just have fun and try to get outside and get some fresh air.
Absolutely. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being on the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm Britton Rucker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
Thanks for watching Ag Etc. As always, I'm Britton Rucker, and I'll see you next week here on Ag AM in Kansas.